We start with the very topic, the Penn State sexual abuse scandal. Ed Rendell's the former governor of Pennsylvania and now an MSNBC political analyst. And Patrick McDonald was 12 years old when he was sexually abused by his scoutmaster. He's now a member of an organization called Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. He's also a columnist for the Daily Beast. Patrick, thank you so much for coming on tonight. We were talking beforehand, and I do salute you for your openness about this troubling situation in our lives today. Tell about what you learned as a victim.
Well, I mean, certainly that's a very broad question in terms of what we learned, what I learned as a victim and what other victims experience.
Why don't people tell on each other? Why don't adults do their job as grown-ups and report horrible criminal behavior by other adults?
Well, there are usually a couple reasons for that. Number one is they suspect that things are going on, and they're not willing to be wrong in terms of challenging an abuser and removing a child from that environment. And really, who cares if you're wrong, if you make a mistake in terms of protecting a kid? But they're not necessarily willing to do that. Or number two is they have some other motives in terms of being quiet about the abuse. You know, I can't speak to who may have benefited from being quiet at Penn State, how McCreary may have benefited from a long-term career, how Paterno may have benefited from a long-term career by being quiet and protecting the organization as well as protecting their friend. And at the end of the day, you have an obligation as a member, and Chris, we talked about this earlier, as a member of the human race, forget your legal obligations. You have a responsibility to kids that are in your charge or that you witness, whether you're responsible for them or not, to protect them by any and all means necessary.
Well, how did it feel as a young, and we have tremendous memories of growing up in our early age, even the early teens and before that. I remember a lot of what it was like to be that age, and I think you obviously do. What was it like back then to think about the adults who were covering up, who refused to come to your aid when they knew something was up that was bad about this behavior by this scoutmaster?
Well, it certainly leads you to believe that you are completely alone in this battle, and you don't have any resources necessary to escape. You're not big enough to get away. You don't necessarily have the courage, and so you count on somebody else to protect you. You count on somebody else to watch your back. And when that doesn't happen, then you're forced with believing, whether it's right or not, that you are completely and utterly alone in this world. And I would tell you, as an adult, you can kind of rationalize that away, but as a child, there is nothing more terrifying than knowing that what's about to happen to you and that nobody is going to come to your defense.
What do you make of this decision by Penn State an hour ago to put Mike McCreary, the guy who allegedly saw a child being raped, and that's the right word for it, and really just think about how bad it could be, because that's how bad it was, apparently. He's on paid leave right now. What do you think of that?
I think that Penn State and everybody in the administration, first of all, should be incredibly ashamed of themselves. They clearly are not willing to progress forward past this and look at what kind of good things can come out of this. They're unwilling to do that. If they were, they would find every person that has a fingerprint on this cover-up. They'd find them and they would fire them. And that would be that. There'd be no, we're going to put you on paid administrative leave. We're going to put you on unpaid administrative leave. It would be, you knew this, or you should have known that, and you did nothing. You did not meet your moral obligations at all. Go away. And until that happens, Penn State is going to be looked at almost as a laughingstock of an organization where they do not care whatsoever about kids, where their entire organization is around that, and they choose to ignore it.
Pat, I want to get to the Penn State situation with Governor Rendell in just a moment, right after this. But I want you both to watch this. On ABC this morning, George Stephanopoulos interviewed the mother of victim number one in this case, the boy who was allegedly subjected to oral sex and fondling on at least 20 occasions by Coach Jerry Sandusky. Her voice was changed and her image obscured, the mother's, to protect her identity, obviously. Let's listen to her.
Why do you think your son never told you?
Well, I think it was a lot of embarrassment. He was letting me hints to figure it out. And I did eventually figure it out.
And when you finally did have the chance to have a heart-to-heart with your son years after the relationship first began, tell us about that. What happened?
We had a discussion where, I had said, if, maybe we should have, come to this conclusion earlier. You should have told me. And he was like, well, he said, I didn't know what to do. I just didn't know what to do. And you just can't tell Jerry no.
Governor, you're a Penn State fan as well as a Penn fan. You went to Penn, but I think I understand a little bit about that feeling up in Happy Valley up there, that sense, almost a religious sense of the importance of Paterno and that football program. What's your sense of it as this thing's really come open now?
Well, I think the university has to do what Patrick says. They have to really wipe the slate clean and start anew. And they've got to emphasize that Penn State is more than just a football program. Under Graham Spanier's leadership, it's become one of the great public universities in the country, one of the best academically. And it's more than just football. And that's a point that ought to be made. But they need to put all of this behind them. They need to understand the reality here is if in 2002, whether it's Coach Paterno, Athletic Director Curley, Mr. McQuarrie, if someone had reported it to the police, there are at least 5 young men who wouldn't have had their lives unalterably changed in what happened in 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And that's an incredible tragedy. It's horrific.
Governor, it reminds me of my church, where this sense of omerta, of looking out for your adult colleagues, takes precedent over taking responsibility for the safety, really, the moral safety, psychological, physical safety of young people in local parentis who are basically in your charge.
It's absolutely true. There's that sort of circle the wagons and protect the institution or protect our guy. But let me ask you a question, Chris. Did they protect Jerry Sandusky? If they had turned Jerry Sandusky in 2002, he would have a lot less criminal instances on his blotter, and he would have perhaps gotten a shorter jail sentence. Right now, if he's convicted, he may be in jail the rest of his life. Did they help him?
So are you with Pat McDonald, who in principle thinks they have to clean the slate up there?
I think
they have to remove all vestiges of responsibility for this cover-up.
Absolutely, because that's a statement that we're taking it seriously. We understand what was done. We understand the incredible harm was done to young people's lives. Pat may corroborate this, but it's a pain. It's an emotional scarring that it will probably exist your entire life. And in some cases, Pat's obviously come back, but in some cases, you never regain a normal sense and a normal balance. So Penn State's got to make a statement that this is tremendously important to us. We take it seriously. We want to start anew. We're going to develop a whole new culture.
You know what's so hard, Governor, and Pat, and you're not part of this, Pat, but Governor Rendell and I are part of it as Pennsylvanians. It's so much good up against so much bad. Right. It's just hard to deal with. Graham Spanner up there has done, as you said, done a wonderful job as president up there with his music department, with his fine arts department, all across the board. That school has become so good at turning out with these kids that don't come there with a lot of money. They're average kids with average incomes and parents. And this guy gives them a first-rate education. And this horror, on top of that, it's just tragic,
There's no question. And Chris, Joe himself. I mean, obviously, this is a horrible black mark on his balance sheet. But Joe Paterno did a whole lot more than just football. He helped the university. He and his wife gave millions of dollars to the university. He helped virtually every charity, Salvation Army, you name it, in Pennsylvania. He did a lot of good. And it's tragic on the level that this may be what he winds up being remembered for.
Well,
sure
if I
right.
can add...
Pat,
if I can respond to that just for a minute, is
please.
All the good perhaps that he's done in the past, myself and the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of others that are like me, and the boys that were abused by the assistant coach, we don't really care. We really don't care. As far as we're concerned, every other good thing that he did is wiped out and was a sham, because what we really saw is the person that Joe Paterno comes across as somebody who's going to look out for his best interests and the best interests of his organization, aside from his obligation to everybody else. So I don't care to hear another sob story or sob comment about all the great things he did.
It's not a sob story.
We don't care about it.
It's a realization that people are human beings, and none of us are perfect. What he did is horrific, and not thinking about the kids and the kids that could potentially be injured is a tragedy, and it's nothing he can ever make up for. But when you look at individuals, you have to look at the totality of their lives. And again, does this wipe out a lot of the good that he did? Sure it does. You're absolutely right. And again, there's no way of apologizing to the kids who came after who would have been saved had they reported this.
Yep.
Last word, Patrick.
I guess the last thing that I'd say is, to the young man who actually came forward and to those that were involved with this, when you're out there and you feel as if you are completely alone and that you don't have any support, I would tell you that you have a tremendous amount of support. There are millions of us around. And if you feel
What's
lost...
the name of your group again? Put it up there on the screen.
The name of the group that I would talk to is RAINN.org, RAINN.org. It's an organization that's designed specifically to either prevent sexual abuse or to give people resources necessary to rebound from it.
You're an honorable man. You're a great man, a courageous guy. I'm so glad you came on to give a firsthand account of what it's like to be a victim. And that is the paramount concern we have tonight. Thank you. Governor Rendell, you're a great man. Thanks for coming on.